So thank you guys so much for joining this panel. All right, so this is a panel that is near and dear to my heart. That's why they put me on it, because it's all about succession planning, license to lead, and succession planning. So for me, that means always preparing for the next generation after me. It means like whatever we can do to commit to the next generation in terms of their welfare, their vision planning, anything they need for success. I think I've told people that this succession plan work is a part of my DNA. I found out through an African ancestry test that my family's from Sierra Leone, and there's a secret society of women who belong to the Mende tribe called Sandy, and their mission was to usher in the next generation, right? And I was like, wow, that is kind of what I do naturally, right? So I'm in my space. I'm in my mission, and sort of everything I do is intended and moved towards that direction. So I'm very interested in hearing, like, what is your mission moment? Why do you do this work? And are you a firm believer in succession planning, right? So I'm going to start on the end, and I just want you to introduce yourself, tell me your name, title, organization, and why is succession planning what you believe, or if not, what is it?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Adrianne. I wouldn't be here without her, so appreciate everything you're doing.
Adrianne.
My name is Manny Larcher. I'm the founder of Colaeb. There's an AE in there. It's because in 2015, I started an event called Collaborate and Elevate. And long story short, I was telling her I was a part of a telehealth startup that sold in 2017. And, I felt like I got lucky. And then after that, I started hanging out with some other folks that a lot of people wanted access to. So instead of like gatekeeping, I started this event series, Collaborate and Elevate. And since then, we've helped facilitate millions, into younger founders. So it's all about giving back for me. It helps my soul, but it also helps like my business, and it helps just all parties. So, yeah.
I love it. And Manny got a haircut. His thing isn't the same. I'm like, that does not look the same. There's an imposter here. Okay.
It's too hot. I was just
right.
I was here with the fro last year.
Thank you for joining us, Manny. Thank you for that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Runke Jane Adelican, and I am the founder of Black Creative Trailblazers. It's the largest network of Black creatives in the northwest of England, and so we support about 1,000 creatives. Our whole mission is to reduce the barriers that stop Black creatives from being able to build successful careers in the creative industry. I think my business partner and I saw that a lot of creatives were dropping out. They weren't able to really sustain their career or make a living out of it. They were balancing creativity with a 9-to-5, and actually there's enough room and there's enough opportunities for people to be able to make it, particularly people from my community. And so that's essentially what we set out to do. So we do that through workshops, through training, through opportunities. We have a group chat that we share opportunities to, and we support a network of 1,000 creatives. And yeah, I believe that it's so important because if we can open the door for the next generation, if we can make it easier, then more of us will be able to get to a point where we're successful. And you don't have to make the same mistakes that I'm making. If I've made it and I can share that information with you, then we all benefit.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Wesley Wilson. I'm founder of the ColorComm Corporation. We have the ColorComm Network and ColorComm Media Group. We've been around for 15 years. And under ColorComm Network, we focus on advancing leaders in business through a variety of different ways, through our membership component, our conference series, access to our board, mentorship, and more. And then under ColorComm Media Group, we are a full-service strategic communications company advising corporations, and we work with stakeholders and thought leadership and executive visibility and positioning. So we do a variety of work in that space, internal and external communications. So to answer the question, I think that succession planning is very important to continue building the legacy companies that we are running. And if we want them to continue, we're not going to be in these positions forever. So we really need to open the door for the next generation, and so that the work that we do doesn't die when we die. We want other people to carry it on, and we have to do that in a very strategic way. And there's so many ways we can do that.
My name is Maria McDowell. I run an initiative called Lollipop Mentoring. I started it in 2021. and this was sort of the height of COVID, and I basically had a midlife crisis, hence my tattoos. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that I had become quite senior in advertising. I was a operations director, and I started working for, in my spare time, working for other organizations that were helping diverse youth. And I realized that they were white and they were getting all the funding. And I thought, well, I can't do that because I don't have the network and I don't have, but I thought, well, actually, I could have needed something like this. So I decided that I was going to create a platform that if you were a mid-level black woman, you could go onto this, sign up, and I would pair you with a senior mentor. And looking back at this, I realized that I had ADHD, and so rejection, sensitivity was a thing. So I was like, my God, if I saw someone, I'd really love to ask you, could you mentor me? But if you said no, I'd rather not bother. So I set up Lollipop Mentoring, didn't know whether it would kind of, have any traction. And, now we've got over sort of almost 600 registered mentors and mentees. So I say all this to say, I did it not necessarily looking at succession, but I looked at, well, I've got a daughter, and what could help her? Because I remember waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning being so full of anxiety, so full of fear. What did I need? And so I set up Lollipop Mentoring in 2021, just on a bit of a punt, as we say in the UK, which is a gamble. And we seem to have been doing quite well. And so in terms of succession, it's like, okay, now that I'm here, we need to help the next generation who aren't as confident as we think they are. Yeah. And doesn't have the support and the big brother and the big sister support. So I match them with senior mentors who can be black, white, whatever. They choose what they want, and it's been an eye-opener, and it's developed me and developed them.
I love that. Manny, you built Colaeb as a model for, something in a community, like for something that, what am I thinking, for something that, was a need that was missing. What are the pieces, or what keeps you in that intentional mode that makes it worthwhile? Like, how do you maintain your connection to what it is that you're building and keeping that model consistent?
Yeah, no, great question. I've pretty much been working in startups for like 15 years, and then I did a stint in finance. And, I just think luck is work, and then, things just adding up and they work out in your favor. So I feel like I got a little bit lucky in the startups where I was 25, and it was just like a event like this, really. And I met someone, they wanted me to join their team. 2 weeks later, we raised like $500,000, and then that company was acquired by Cardinal Health in 2017. But that's a learning moment, because if the team had stayed together and continued building, we would have had an exit that none of us could have imagined in 2020. So just being in startups and being a black founder, how hard it is to raise capital. And, there was I was born in Ohio. I've lived in Miami, Florida as well. But, it's whatever city you're in, I think if you talk to the founders, know the investors, whatever city or state. So a lot of it is, if you talk to the founders, there's always someone that helped them along the way to simplify it, whether it's an accountant or, so that's just how I look at it. Whatever I could do to make it easier for the 23-year-old, which is, someone I just invested in actually now in the city, but just make it easier for them to build their idea out and get out their way.
And when you think about that part of legacy building and creating, as we think about succession planning, what's the sticky part that's most important to you? And I guess that could be a question for all of you if you think about it, the legacy. And I think that's what the succession planning is all about, right?
For sure.
So what is the most important part as you build your model of the legacy and the succession plan? Is there one particular piece that's important?
Yeah, I think it's community. We now have 3 people in our network that have sold their company. Those folks invite me to Thanksgiving. We're doing life with each other. So, I think you could be transactional or you could do life with someone. And when someone sells their company, they buy a house, they get married, they have kids. That's just all. That's the legacy component for me.
Yeah, I want to add to that. And I think for us, the legacy is always changing the structures that exist. I think a network is a huge part of that, having people that you can look around to and ask questions and people who will advocate for you in rooms that you're not in, but also changing the rooms so that when people like us walk in, they don't have to face the same hurdles, the same struggles as past generations. I think for us, it's all about changing the structures that exist to make the spaces more acceptable and more welcoming and more palatable to our success. Yeah.
Just to piggyback off what I hate that I just said just piggyback. But I'm from a Jamaican, Caribbean, UK background, and I remember being just in terms of succession, having issues at work and going, oh, this has happened, and my dad would go, just work hard, it will be okay. They didn't have the tools to help me, and so Lollipop is creating a community of people that can help each other. And it's all, to your point about community, it's other people that go, okay, well, I've tried this. It's all about kind of getting people together and making sure that, okay, you have that network. And I didn't know anything about networking. I'd never, that's something completely new to me. And I didn't have the tools to be able to network. I didn't understand it. I wasn't confident enough. And so this thing in terms of building a community, giving people confidence, in fact, even being here in Cannes, the community and the networking that's happening, that we're all privy to, is something that, unless I paid for it, I have, paid for myself and invested in myself to come as, Maria, founder of Lollipop, telling people to do the same and being able to network and to understand those structures that a lot of white people are already privy to because it's just natural for them. Yeah. It's that succession and understanding that they do deserve to be in those rooms. They do deserve to be, they are just the same as everybody else. That is that succession, and this is a kick-ass generation that we should be, and I'm happy to be part of building.
But I also want to add back to the original question of what's the most important thing in terms of passing on a legacy, and I think it's passing on, making sure that the team in place really understands your vision, because you don't want anyone taking over the company that you've built. Yeah. You want to make sure you have a team that really is, it's not just about the finances. It's about really carrying on the mission and vision of what you spent all those years building.
That's an interesting point about the vision of an organization or the vision of something you have built that you want to continue. So if we think about sort of that next iteration of our organizations that we're building, and I know ultimately if something happened to us today, we ultimately don't have control of what someone else does who has the reins to take charge. So how do you ground that next generation to follow sort of your lead? And I guess more importantly, how flexible are you in terms of the direction they may take? Like, are you interested in the growth opportunity of it? And I guess that's even more of a question for today, right? Like, are you interested in the shift that the organization may need to take or can take? And the idea ultimately didn't come from you or you or you or me. So what do you think about that in terms of keeping the vision intact?
Yeah, I'll go first. I try to focus on, I guess, bipartisan issues. Workforce development is, both. Everyone wants to go to work and help grow. But it is tough, obviously, especially with the climate, the political climate, how it could be. But I just think, if you focus on an issue that both sides, agree on, you could really just, start from there and try not to be, divisive. But it is hard.
What I also would say is, the point of what we're talking about today is having a plan in place, right? So I mean, no one knows what's going on inside your head. So thinking about, let's say if something were to happen to you today do you have a plan in place? Do you have someone in line to execute that? And really thinking big picture.
I think, I'm coming from a slightly different angle in that lollipop mentoring is more of a community type thing as opposed to this is my organization. Lollipop doesn't necessarily need to exist because I'm part of it or, I just want people to feel empowered is essentially the message that I want. And I think, the head, the organization rots from the head, right? So therefore, what I can instill is, try and be confident, try and do what you need to do to everybody else. So it's not talking as a head of an organization, it's mainly talking as, I just want everyone to kind of do what they need to do. I remember when I started Lollipop, I didn't see anyone who looked like me or who was like me. I'm late. I like having a drink. I like being me. And I met up with some gatekeepers who looked like me, right? Who didn't necessarily, they were like, well, you don't fit the stereotype of what somebody who is trying to do mentoring in this space looks like. And so I think for me, in terms of succession, I'm just trying to teach people to be kick-ass, right? And to say, right, I see a gap, do that. Right, but also be human and be kind.
This is a random question, and then where did the name Lollipop come from? Like, that's been on my mind. What is that about?
Okay, so I think when you talk about Lollipop was set up to help mid-level black women, and I think when you talk about race, it's very sort of serious. It's all very, this, that, the other. And I think as black women, we're women and we come in different sizes, shapes, flavors, and we are fun, right? And I'm not saying that race isn't fun, but I just wanted to have that element of it. And my friend who's French, she said, I was talking to her one time and she said, I said, what's your favorite word? And she said, lollipop. Lollipop. And it's fun and it's different. And I thought it reflects who we are as women. We're not always the caretaker of everybody. We're not always, it's tiring sometimes. Sometimes we're fun and we need to be individualistic. And so I just thought Lollipop was fun and that's why I called it that.
Okay, now that burning question is off my mind, I can focus back on what we're talking about. But I like that, the idea that women come in different sizes, shapes, flavors, and interesting. So I get it, Lollipop. Thank you for sharing that. You were going to answer the question.
Yeah, to your question about, what shape the next kind of iteration of the organization takes.
Yeah.
I think as long as the work is being done, that is ultimately our goal. Yes. Our goal is to reduce the barriers that black creatives face to get into the industry. And so as long as someone is in that role and is still doing the work, that however form that takes, that's my goal. I think we try to document as best as we can, and we try to empower as many people as we can. So even if we're not around, we have done enough that work still lives on beyond us. And I think sometimes it's us getting out of the way and allowing people to actually have the freedom and the empowerment and know that they have the power in and of themselves. They don't need our backing to be able to go to an organization and pitch or apply for funding to do that work that will move their career forward. We're all about giving them the tools to do it themselves. So actually, if we can get to a point where we don't have to do it, that's a sign of success.
Is it like having a child where you have a child and then you go, oh, I want the child to be, the child comes out exactly how they're supposed to. They have their own personality, they're all their own people, they're all their own, all you can do is guide them and they'll do what they need to do and they all have their own, I'm just a little bit woo-woo, they all have their own assignment and they all need to do what they need to do.
But sometimes those little kids go rogue, and we want to be able to help guide them. Lauren, you brought up an interesting point about strategy. And I think sometimes, whether it's a nonprofit organization or it's a corporate organization, one of the concerns is about strategy. And sometimes it's also about not having the plan in place that if a key employee leaves, who's going to take that employer's place, right? So they haven't built in that strategy of thinking about succession planning or just even some of the main structures. And as a communications leader, you represent a large organization in the communications field, that strategy is very relevant, right? In creating that game plan. Talk to us more about what a strategy looks like or should look like as you think about your organization or any other organization you're recommending should have one, and how are they building in that idea of the succession plan? I think that's important as a part of a strategy.
Yeah, I think it's something that we're not always thinking about, right? We're moving so quickly, just trying to complete the work, and we're not thinking about, we are thinking about what's next, but we're not necessarily thinking about what's next outside of our control. Like, what are the things that could happen? And usually that's a crisis. But, before you wait till a crisis happens or your key person leaves or unexpectedly, something happens to them, heaven forbid. The thing is, I think what is really important is to say, what does this organization look like 5 years from now with me leading it? What does this organization look like 5 years from now if I'm not leading it? And thinking about just long term and what can you do now to get to where you want to be? And I think that's the important piece. And so much of what we do is within our control. It's just taking the time to think about all the moving pieces and how it really serves your bottom line.
What you wanted to answer, one of you? No?
Yeah, I think
About
it's like
strategy,
change management is how I would look at it. I have a 4-year venture capital stint, and I'll plug who you had on here earlier, A16Z. Like, I think they have like a partner network, a founder network, and basically they're literally just like actively making introductions to other founders and stuff like that. As an owner of a company, it's like just have your insurances and stuff like that in case you die, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what else to do. I'll try to, have the right people in place, but a lot of it kind of just comes down to network and matching up the right people.
And to kind of talk about the structure, because what you said is something that I resonate with within our organization. So Black Creative Trailblazers is run by Adiola and I, who are sisters. And so if something happens in the family, or should anything happen to either of us, it would take both of us out. And so kind of the way we have been approaching our strategy is to have like sub-leaders for each sector of our business. We have a musician's lead, a poet's lead, a fashion design lead for each of our creative arms that we support, and each of them have a deputy under them. So then should anything happen to us, there's several layers of people who can kind of step up into those roles. It's not perfect, and I think you have to be willing to be flexible, but I think just thinking about, okay, should anything happen to me, what is the next step? Can anybody step up? And we're trying to build that, but it's a work in progress.
Yeah. I just speak. So obviously I run Lollipop Mentoring, but I also was head of delivery at JWT, which is a large advertising agency. I remember I planned for my maternity leave and planned for all of those things to happen. And essentially, I think it's about the mission, that everything that you want to achieve, having that strategy in place. However, people was going to do what they're going to do. And it's just a reality of, if people want to make their mark, they want to, they may be fine, they may be a disciple of the follower of what you want to do, but they may have something different, or they just want to make their mark for the sake of making their mark. And it's just a reality, and that's something that, just being realistic, that's what happened to me in my case. I like to come back, dismantle that, and start again.
Yeah, that's interesting. We talked a little bit about this, but the idea of legacy versus evolution, right? And we hinted a little bit about it, but is there something deeper you want to say about legacy versus evolution? And I think, if we even think about some historic, especially in the U.S., some businesses, magazines, media companies that started, 50, 60 years ago, but there's some changes that have come into the organization that are very different from what the organization was originally started for. So when is a good time to decide the shift and change, or do you just shut one thing down and start a new organization? So do we let the legacy die, or do we keep it moving based on the need for evolution?
I don't think you should leave legacy 100%, because people have bought into elements of the legacy, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have the business that you have. I think you should absolutely pay homage to it. At least have, a period of running in parallel with, okay, this is what we did before, this is where we want to go. I think that makes sense. However, sometimes there is a need to evolve, but sometimes there isn't. right? So it's just about being sensitive to what was and what should be happening. And sometimes what you want to evolve it to is not right. So you have to roll back to what worked. And being sensitive to that and having that emotional intelligence, I think, is something that you need to make sure that anyone who's picking up can pick that up, rather than having their own agenda of, this is what I want to do and I'm going to do it come hell nor high water. It's like, well, actually, no, pay attention to what was. That worked clearly. You don't know everything. If you did, you wouldn't need to be part of this and to be, looking into that legacy. That's what I think.
I think it's also really important to listen to your customers, because they're going to help guide you as to where they believe your organization or media brand should go, because they inform you about keeping up with the times, so to speak. I mean, they let you know about the latest tools. They let you know we should be doing this, we should be doing that. You don't have to listen to everything that they say, but if you have enough people saying certain things that are headed in this direction, that's where evolvement comes in. I think when you talk about media companies, and maybe you're thinking about a few that I'm thinking about, but ones that have had a long-standing legacy but have really shifted from where they started, is a shift coming from the customers asking for that, or is a shift coming from operations because they believe that there's more money in X, Y, and Z if we pursue X, Y, and Z? And so that's when there can be this backlash between the two to say, this isn't what the feeling. We understand that most things aren't what they used to be, right? Cannes is not even what it used to be. But when you start to engage with a brand that you say, this isn't really on brand, it has moved away from evolving into something I completely don't feel comfortable with, then that's probably more of like an operations decision than really the need for change from the consumer or customer.
You're going to say something, Rock? Nope.
I want to talk a bit about the mission, because I think that's so key to deciding whether or not to evolve. I think you have to think about, okay, by evolving, does it still serve the mission of the organization I set out to create? If it does, then, move with the times. But if it doesn't, then what is the point in evolving? What is the point in changing if it no longer serves the mission? I think your mission has to be at the heart of what you're doing. And so whatever legacy you're leaving, whatever changes you're making in the organization, it has to serve the mission. Otherwise, maybe change what the organization does. But ultimately, keep the people that you're serving at the heart of what you do, and then you'll be guided in the right direction.
Manny,
Yeah, no, well said with what everyone. I think that technology brings in new changes. So, I watched WizKid documentary on the plane over here, and they credit Spotify for helping Afrobeats go nationally, and they say this streaming tech is why Afrobeats became, and I don't want to call it Afrobeats. I know that's a whole thing too, but I think a new technology. I think to your point, Cannes isn't what it used to be. I think AI, tech is just making us all more connected. It's making certain countries get out of poverty, and I just think that is probably just going to keep accelerating. I'm from St. Lucia, by the way, so just I go home and they look at me like an alien. So I just think. It's a combination of both, but it's hard to evade a billion or $1 trillion behemoth. You almost have to listen to them sometimes.
as the last panel of the day with only 2 minutes left, I think we're getting the short end of the stick because they're wrapping me up already. But I think there's still some, very key and important nuggets about succession planning and what we should do. And even if you think about some of the branding or of some legacy brands like Aunt Your Mama brand, right? And some of the things that happen, when you know that there's a key thing that has to change about it, but everybody knows that, or was it Mrs. Butterworth, or no, what was the other one? The syrup. It was Aunt Jemima, right? Or there were some other ones that have this, and these are American brands that we're talking about. But are there other shifts that you think are important, that succession plan of an idea or about creative had to shift and change? Are there some other ideas that you think that still exist like that, or what other cases do you think the succession plan has to be broken? Was that tough? Everybody's like, whoa, I don't even want to think about that one. I don't know.
The sun is starting to hit.
Maybe Cannes.
Oh, wow.
Maybe Cannes.
And then wait, let's
Well, I think that Cannes is, people come over here and there's, it's lots of yachts and it's lots of money that they throw
That's right.
around. And I don't know if moving forward, I like it. I'm here. But for those with access, it's very nice. But for those without, I think it may need to evolve. And it becoming more inclusive with panels and places like Inkwell, and that's fine, but I'm here, but do I have access to all of those other places? Maybe not. It will need to change, and there'll need to be a succession plan. Whether they believe that or not, I think we'll maybe take it by stealth.
That was a very good example of where we are and like the evolution of this organization and the succession planning of that. Anyone else has any comments about it? Or an idea of an organization group thing?
Yeah, I'm big on apprenticeship.
Yeah.
I, became a VC at 33. It should, by no means, on paper it looked like it. So, but that was really because of someone took the time to learn, my skill set and how I could add value. So, I just think apprenticeship, we need more of that. The opportunity for someone to work directly with a leader, but I still think you need to talk to a lawyer and stuff like that for succession planning.
So that's a key element to it.
Yeah.
It's just not like I pick you and this is my person, but the element of making and vetting the right people and vetting the right, legal steps to create who's going to take over an organization is important. So that's a very interesting point.
Yeah, if like many startups don't have their taxes situation taken care of sometimes, so they could have a big liquidity event, but because they didn't do stuff before that, the founders don't feel it, because they have to pay the IRS. So I see that almost every year. So I think that's one thing, and depending on the amount, that's a lot of money that just got thrown away.
And I think for me and the sector that I work in, working in the UK in the creative industry, I think that's a sector that needs to be changed and it needs a succession plan. I think currently the way it works is that it's based on who you know, not what you know. And if you're not in those rooms, you can't get access. And I think that whole industry needs to be broken open to make it a bit more accessible, and that there needs to be a plan for that. And hopefully with the work that we're doing at Black Creative Trailblazers, that creates a path that makes it easier for people to go in. So that's hopefully our legacy.
Lauren, your final thoughts on? You're like, no.
No. No, I think what everyone said makes a lot of sense. I think this industry, though, the communications industry, the media industry that we're in is changing so much. And I think it's really just interesting to see where we will net out. We know that there's been massive layoffs. We know that there's been a lot of consolidation, mergers and acquisitions, holding companies changing every day, their names. There's so much happening. So
many mergers, so many acquisitions.
Yes. So I would love to just see, when the dust settles, what's left and how do we move forward in this space?
That's such an interesting point, because even in the communications and media, there's buyouts every day. Even the Lions Festival, there is, where we are, Informa now owns the Lions Festival. So what shifts do we expect, and how do they think about maintaining the culture? What's the succession plan of, the existence of where we are? So that would be interesting. Do you have one last word, one last moment to say?
God, you've asked me now. I think my last words is that, obviously we're looking at the industry and we're asking people to do what they need to do, and obviously we're talking about our own succession plan. I would just empower people to not necessarily ask for permission, but maybe ask for forgiveness. So do what you feel that you need to do, because if you wait and you wait and you wait, it won't necessarily happen. I think we had a moment in 2020 where, diversity was the whole, I'm jumping back to diversity, but diversity was the whole thing, and we thought there was going to be a different succession plan and that things would change. And it's moved and it's changed, and it hasn't been that. Therefore, I think there's power in being an individual and power in taking that step yourself without necessarily seeing something. You can do it yourself, essentially.
Well, I think the idea of, were you about to say something?
I didn't know,
go ahead.
was this going to be for everyone one last word? Or?
No, go ahead.
I thought it was for everyone.
No, I was just going to say, my thoughts were just to say that, especially while we're here, just create your own access, because there are so many rooms that you can get into on your own. No does not mean a no forever. And we talk a lot about gatekeeping. Just continue to push forward. There's other gates to open up. Just when one door closes, it does not mean that door is closed forever. You can seriously go, in my case, I go around people all the time. So, I mean, I'm always get my hand slapped. So, I mean, otherwise I'd be waiting around for you to get me that introduction that you promised me 2 months ago, and then 2 months later you still haven't done it, and I got a week to wait. So, you know, I got 1 week, and if it doesn't happen, I'm doing it myself. And honestly, that's the best thing. You know, all these tools are open to you at your fingertips. It is so easy to find people, and it's all about what you say to get their attention. But, you know, there's LinkedIn, there's email. You know, don't need to write a paragraph. You know, you don't need to write a whole novel to get people's attention. I mean, it's really just a brief paragraph and being specific on a date and time in which you'd like to talk. And you don't need to put together your full schedule because no one wants to read all that. Yeah. They just want something specific, like Monday at 2 o'clock. And if they can't, they'll tell you it's Wednesday at 3 and you make yourself available. But it's really very simple. We make it hard by just oversharing, talking too much, asking for requests from people we don't know very well. Do the delegate dance, be specific, and doors will open for you.
And I kind of want to add to what you said about kind of...
Oh, I got some snaps in the back. All right.
Yeah, because what you said is so important about, like, you know, creating access for yourself. And I feel like a great way to do that is by, like, meeting people in person and, like, having that FaceTime with them. I think having advocates is so key. Like, you might have to send 20 emails to get one thing done, but if you have one advocate in an organization, that can move so fast. And I think nothing is easier than a face-to-face, in-person connection. So take the 5 minutes, make the call, meet them in person, and get someone on site that can advocate for you so you don't have to work 10 times as hard.
Yeah, everything they just said. I think in 2026, we're still talking about how face-to-face is the most important thing. So I think that says a lot. And I want to give my guy, Eric, a shout out. But you just never know how people are going to talk about you when you're not in the room. So, you know, use your voice and take risk. You know, don't sound like a bot, which is now we all have that bot, you know. So it's, I think, being unique and showing how you differentiate and just keep shooting.
I love how the succession plan turned into how you personally succession plan with succession planning, and here particularly at this festival. So I thank you all for participating in this panel. Did you guys have any questions for anybody? No? As I said, no, yeah, okay, right. You don't have, there's one, okay. We will give you that question, yep.
Thank you. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you to all of you on the panel. I think you guys are absolutely incredible. What I wanted to ask is for new founders or people whose companies are in their infancy, what advice would you give when it comes to networking, particularly in environments like this? You did touch on gatekeeping before. There is quite a bit of that happens, and I think sometimes when we're in environments like this, when there's not much funding that goes towards our initiatives, we tend to be our own worst enemy. So I just wanted to find out if you have any tips to counter that sort of issue, because I think a lot of us in the room today will probably say that that's an issue that we are having as well.
Can we just get one answer?
I will just say that, so I came out here and I remember being quite emotional and emotionally drained because I started Lollipop and I wasn't getting the support. And I just cornered people and said, I know when I go back home, you're probably not going to answer my email or my call, will you? And I just very direct. I don't have time to fanny about. That's what I did, and that's what I said to them and said, this is what is happening to me. I was very straightforward, very, not necessarily aggressive, but I just told them what was happening and I was just really straight. And then also follow up.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the panel. This was our last moment or full panel of the day. When we wrap, we have a quick award ceremony that we're giving out, our Aya Inclusion Award, which is all about inclusive creative. So if you guys want to stay around for that, it won't take more than like 15 minutes. But thank you so much. Please give our panelists a round of applause. This conversation is dear to my heart about succession planning, and we're grateful for your participation. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.